raining sunbeams. The world is young, it's spring again, and I can laugh and sing again, for I know it's raining sunbeams.
Okay, いかがですか? Watanabe Dan desu. On today's episode of Alt Cinema, we're going to be looking at the career of Deanna Durbin, the sweetheart of song, a teenager who in the 1930s was one of the top box office draws in the United States. While not necessarily remembered today, it's important to put her in the context of the times and to realize that the producers who put her up on the screen, Henry Koster and Joe Pasternak, needed her to be successful. They were escapees from Nazi Germany, and had her film career not been successful, they might have been sent back. And in the process, Universal Pictures itself might not be here today. So join us as we examine Durbin's career through many interesting permutations, from her time as an angelic operatic singer, through her weird start in her career with Judy Garland, and through her very, very successful but sometimes tumultuous career at Universal. And we're also going to see how, at the end of the day, she ended up having one of the most satisfying private lives of any young child star who managed the transition into adulthood. Further, we're going to look at the historical context and talk about some of the backstories on what was going on in that era, muse on some of the visualizations that were there in her films, talk about some of the productions of hers that are not available to see at the moment. All in all, I feel that looking at the career of someone like Durbin is as illuminating as to what can happen in Hollywood today as it was in satiating Depression-era audiences, that there was a hope for tomorrow. Today, our guest is Hisato Masuyama, and Hisato Masuyama is one of the foremost experts on musical films, and more interestingly, he's someone who learned all of his information from Japan. Yes, Hisato and I have known each other since junior high school at St. Mary's International School in Tokyo. The person we're going to be discussing today is Deanna Durbin, and why she was one of the most important musical stars of the 1930s, even if you haven't heard of her. After this, I'm hoping that you will seek her out and the movies she made, because she really is someone special in the history of musical films. Anyway, Hisato, let me start by asking you, what is it that interested you particularly in Deanna Durbin?
For starters, my father bought me the record that had her in it. And I read in the liner notes that she was a child star. And to have a child, and for a child to have that kind of a real adult voice was very, very interesting, and really triggered my interest. So anyone with exceptional talent really fascinated me a lot. Much like, as you say, like Mickey Rooney or Judy Garland, or in this case, Deanna Durbin. And since she was so obscure at the time, no one really knew who she was anymore. And my thing was, not back in the days, but much later in my life, I would say anyone who retired before 1950s, virtually forgotten. But then again, depends on which movie studio you're from as well. If it's not circulated, then you're forgotten. In Deanna Durbin's case, she was virtually forgotten. And despite the fact that I see some leaflets floating around that I got much, much later than when it happened, like a Deanna Durbin festival in the 70s, I was in Japan. What could I do, right? Well, So the interest came about when my father told me that he was a huge fan of hers before the war. He used to go and see this one particular film called 100 Men and a Girl, which is noted for, along with Three Smart Girls, the first film she made at Universal reluctantly, saved Universal Pictures from bankruptcy. So no Three Smart Girls, 100 Men and a Girl, no Universal legacies, because it would have been kaput, basically. In came these people from Europe, Henry Koster and Joe Pasternak, who actually exiled from Paris for a good reason. The reason's called Hitler. Interesting story that Robert Koster, Henry Koster's son, told me directly is that that one day when Henry Koster went to the bank to get some money out, the guard was a Nazi sympathizer, I should say, and wouldn't let him in. But somehow he got in, and the clerk was the same thing. He wouldn't let him have any money because he was, well, basically the quote was that there's no money for you Jews here, is what he was told. Henry Koster was told. Well, at this point, he was so annoyed that he took the telephone right next to, because back in the days there was no mirror, no glass in between. Took the phone right next to me and he smashed his head, and he became unconscious. And when that happened, the manager of the bank, who was actually a good friend of Henry Koster, took all the money and gave it to him and said, "Here, take this and leave here and go to Paris right now, right now." And he left for Paris on that train. And it's not a kicker, but the lucky thing is that train is the last train that left for Paris for the duration. If he didn't make that train, then he would have been caught, and you know where he would have gone. So in Paris, he met up with his old friend, Joe Pasternak, who's been making films there as well. Not Paris, but he used to make films in Vienna. And he made, if you ever heard of an actress by the name of Francesca Gall, who Paramount brought in, and because Pasternak made her a star. And she was a youngster, but she was like, late teens, early 20s. So when in Paris, Koster got married and would make films with for Universal, the European division of it, and they had a verbal contract that they're supposed to come to the States and make films there. Well, at this point, they were desperate, so they hopped on the ship and went to the States and said, "Hey, we're here. We're going to fulfill our obligation to you." And the Universal here's the executives here said, "No, what are you talking about? That you can't be here. Go home." And since their lives were in stake, they basically said, "No, we have a good film for you. And we're ready to make it." Blurted out one of them, and of course the other one's thinking, "Oh God, what can we do? What can we do?" So one of them, Koster, was, "Well, it's about these three girls." "Yeah, what about the three girls?" And think quick, think. It's about these three girls trying to bring back their parents. It was on the spot kind of a decision that they had to, make. And then, of course, they got people like Adele Comandini, a renowned screenwriter at the time, and hatched out the plan and wrote a screenplay. Well, thing is that what they didn't know was that this was a cornerstone film for Universal Pictures. the film was called Three Smart Girls, surprisingly. Um, and they started to plan for the film, and the plan was to use Judy Garland because Pasternak loves people with or girls with talent or guys with talent, singers especially, operatic ones. So it'll show in later in his MGM career, he had a plethora of them, but she was the first American one. And as he made Star with Francesca Gall, he was planning to make one with Garland as well. I mean, everyone knows the famous story that that Durbin was dropped erroneously. Well, we'll never know about that because the Durbin's contract apparently has lapsed already, sometime before Every Sunday was made. Let's put it that way. And when Every Sunday was made, she was no longer under contract, but she had an obligation to MGM apparently, and that's how she made Every Sunday. So at that point, right after they made Every Sunday, Universal snatched up Durbin, and lucky for Costner and Pasternak, they were very, very used to people, used to handling people with like a European flavor, which Durbin had. Every single night, Henry Costner would go to Deanna Durbin's home to coach the scenes of the upcoming scenes. And she would cry every night and say, I don't want to be a movie star, I just want to sing. That's all she would say. But Henry Costner would say, no, you signed a contract and you have to do this. It's for your own good. It's for his own good too, because if this film didn't go, back to Europe he goes, and then you know what happens. He's going to be captured. So he was desperate for his life. He was, and she was in Japanese you call them inochizuna, which is lifeline, and she was his lifeline right now. At that point, so he has coached her, and what was amazing is that this young timid girl who had like 2 lines in Every Sunday, the rest of the film is all Garland, drama wise, and you can tell in Every Sunday she wasn't an actress. But you watch Three Smart Girls today and you say, how can a girl of 14 years with no acting ability carry on a scene or a movie like this? She must have had something in her that was yearning to come out. When this film happened, Three Smart Girls, she was an overnight sensation, and she had just turned 15 when it premiered. Of course, all the film studios, if you're a child, they took a year off your age. So instead of December the 4th, 1921, which is her birthday, they said December 4th, 1922, which would make her, oh, she just turned 14. No. Same. They did it with Rooney, they did it with Garland, they did it with everybody to make the child more prodigious. Is that a name? Is that a word? The younger you are, the better you are. So that's how Deanna Durbin became an overnight sensation, because of her naturalness and her photo, and she was very, very photogenic, like that, and her voice, which was $1 million voice. So back to why I was interested in her, simply because of those couple of songs from the compilation record that my father bought me back in the days, and my father telling me that she was his favorite, and the fact that when I went to the States that summer to go to summer school back in 1976, my father told me to buy, if you find a Deanna Durbin record called La Traviata, buy it, because I like to hear it again. So I found one a 20-song compilation record called Sweetheart of Song, which while I was playing it at my uncle's house, he had an ancient record player from the 1950s, and the needle was so heavy, and those 20-song records, the grooves are so tiny that it scratched the record. And so I have been trying to convince myself back in the days that it's going to play fine, and I heard and I listened to it over and over and over again, and I realized they are fun songs, and she had a great voice, and I started to become interested in her, but to no avail, other than a film called 100 Men and a Girl, which was shown on Japanese TV with subtitles. So I could hear her speaking voice as well. And I remember tape recording it, and and thinking how corny it was. For a kid, for an 8-year-old kid who has no idea. Well, actually, no, I was 9, but a 9-year-old kid who had no idea about old American movies from the 30s. Of course, it looked corny. It was not until recent years that I realized what a great script that film had. No wonder it got nominated for Academy Award. It does things that a lot of films did not do, which is have a great arc and have every single thing that happened in the movie having a resolution at the end. Every single thing that happened in the script had a resolution. Who'd have thought?
I'll tell you one of the things that I love about 100 Men and a Girl when we look at it today is that it is so sophisticated visually, and it's so life-affirming, but at the same time, shockingly realistic, because it's about a girl whose family is, or the boarding house she lives in is full of musicians who cannot find a job. It's the Depression. Everyone is poor. Everyone is at the tail end of their ability to afford anything. And if we look at the costumes she's wearing are hardly glamorous. This is not MGM. We see her in dresses that look secondhand. They look worn. In much of the movie, she wears a coat. She wears a hat that looks a little bit inappropriate because she made it herself. And there's so much in it that reminds us that this was a tough period. Moreover, the movie does something that's very shocking. It shows the class differences, because in one scene, she convinces a rich family to support the band, only to find out the next day that the woman who said it was going off on a trip
and didn't mean it.
Didn't support them. So we see that even in a light movie, we have these serious undertones. And I think that's why when we watch it today, it still works so well.
It's true. And what's more amazing is the scene in which she's trying to convince her father to get these men together to make an orchestra. Not only she speaks uber fast, but her ability to convince, she was directed so well that you start to wonder, oh, she really didn't have any acting ability before the film. I mean, she was amazing. She really was. And in every single film, she has to have a cry scene. And she was famous for being able to just open her eyes and have tears well up and fall. And by the way, this that you see is because of her. Because of the money that she got, and she made Universal, became the new Universal, the first film that was ever made with the famous globe logo was a film called Top of the Town. Not a good movie, forgettable songs, stupid plot, but the set, they were trying to be up there with MGM with the sets. The sets were gorgeous in Art Deco, and the credit sequence is the best thing in the show. It's an integrated credit sequence. I've got to show you one of these days. It's quite amazing.
You mentioned the big elephant in the room, and that is Judy Garland and Deanna Durbin.
The evaluation would be, unfortunately for Garland, Durbin was prettier. Looking at the film, you can tell. You know, you look at both of them, and yes, Garland had that magnetic personality, but it was still diamond in the rough. They were trying so much to fix her looks at MGM. Even when she was under contract and was making films, they didn't know what to do with her face.
Swing, north, south, east, west, just swing. You'll find that swing is best. Swing, make it a national thing. Stand today, oh.
In every single movie, Judy Garland really didn't become an MGM Judy Garland until I'd say about 1941. That's when she really started to have her look. But until then, they didn't know what to do with the looks. While on the other hand, Durbin was just natural, and all they did was just plaque her eyebrows, and you know that because she was naturally pretty. But that said, Durbin took the took the back seat to Garland because of her acting ability in Every Sunday. And Garland had the longer song. Durbin's was only about a third of a song, and that was it. And you'd assume that's like part of the song. And they they just truncated it to fit the time for like 10 minutes. No. If you look at the original recording or logo, and if you look at the original, listen to the original recordings, that's all she recorded for that scene. I guess MGM knew either ways that Garland was going to be kept, so let's, star her more. The difference in personality is that Garland shone more, but Durbin was easier on the eyes at the time. Now, my take on Garland, because she was my first love, no matter what. Spring Parade is a fascinating film. That's one of the films that was non-existent on television because of several reasons. First of all, it was a film that was a remake. Now, I did mention Franziska Gall earlier, yes? Franziska Gall starred in Frühlingsparade, which is Spring Parade. It's an Austrian film from 1933 with the same songs and everything. And same plot, a bit twisted around in the Spring Parade to put in the character of the two Butch and Buddy, the two kids, and all that stuff. So the plot is just a hair different. They just twisted it around. Anyway, what had happened was when they made the film, and it's one of the most charming films you can ever watch. Feisty little peasant girl who goes to who goes to the marketplace to sell her goat. There, she buys an omikuji, a fortune. In the fortune, it has 4 things written down, and in a nutshell, every single one of them become true.
I love to climb an apple tree, though apples be not bad for me, and I'll be sick as I can be. It's foolish, but it's fun. While wise men figure time and space and get all wrinkled in the face, I'm loafing in some shady place. It's foolish, but it's fun. If it should ever come to pass that I inherit wealth, I'll eat and drink and eat until I wreck my health.
The sad thing about Spring Parade is that in 1947, the original screenwriter, who did not get any credit nor money residuals for this film, sued Coster and Pasternak or Universal, and won. And it was taken out of circulation in 1947, and Universal lost the rights to it. Just, if anything, just bootleg copies of a little splicey 35 millimeter print is available on was available on a bootleg video, and then on a bootleg DVD. But it's got a happy ending. The Library of Congress has restored the film to to its beautiful, in all its glory, with all the slices and everything intact. I mean, not intact, what am I saying? Of all the scenes reinstated from the 35 millimeters. And I've recently watched it at the Egyptian, recently meaning about 8 years ago. And it was a great print. So I'm glad that it exists in its complete form now. All of her Universal International movies, when they kept her, because she was, one of the biggest stars Universal had, and they dropped a whole bunch of other Universal contract players. Of course, she and people like Yvonne DiCarlo and Dan Duryea were kept there because they were making a lot of money. Well, her new contracted have stated, as early as 1941, when she re-signed her contract, because she was a huge star, she wanted films to have made films in other studios like Fox or MGM, especially MGM, because that's where Pasternak was. And Pasternak was ready to have her in, make films at MGM, such as Seven Sweethearts, made by Kathryn Grayson, after all. That's an obvious Durbin vehicle. And even Presenting Lily Mars with Garland, that's another Durbin film made at MGM. Whole bunch of any number of them, any of those soprano films like Toast of New Orleans, or even That Midnight Kiss. Those films could have been made by Deanna Durbin. And I will say, Kiss Me Kate would have been really good with her in it. Now, there's nothing against Grayson, because she's great too, but Durbin would have done a great job as well, even in Showboat, or even Rosemary, or the one that she really wanted to do, apparently, was The Opposite Sex. I think the role went to June Allyson instead. She would have been great in that film, and to have the new Deanna Durbin, the one with the coiffed hair and everything in the short 50s do, and that horrible number that June Allyson does called "Now Baby Now," with her singing it, would have been a different story. She probably would have said, "What is this horrible song? Get me a proper one." So Nicholas Brodsky probably would have written another, a good song for her. In 1950, she married a French director by the name of Charles-Henri David, Charles David, who directed her in Lady on a Train. And his American credit also has another film, ironically, starring Gloria Jean, the second Deanna Durbin that didn't become as big as she. That was a Universal programmer back in 1945. So I guess he made those two films in 45, and that was it. Anyway, she married him, and from my understanding, Pasternak really wanted to sign her at MGM. And despite the fact that that it's been said that she didn't want to do that, and she have declined every single offers, it's been suggested in recent years by the Deanna Durbin Society people that she actually wanted to sign with MGM to make all those films that was, set up for her, like, Kiss Me Kate, Showboat, what have you. I don't know about Showboat, but it's a big possibility. But Charles David said, well, old-fashioned man says, there's only one breadwinner in this family, and that is me. And she said, all right. So she did not sign the contract. And she even declined My Fair Lady on Broadway. She was really tempted to do that. Now, she did the world a favor by declining it so that we can have Julie Andrews. But the funny thing is that she was really considering it. So, and then she just became the whatever became of people. So there are several famous pictures of her at the streets of Neaufle-le-Château, where she lived. And the picture of she and her son, Peter David, when she was in her late 30s. And the famous comeback picture from 1982 on the LA Times, when she was actually, quoted saying, I can still walk under the arch of triumph without holding my breath. Because people were saying that she was getting fat and all that stuff. Well, no matter what, she did have a rich, full life after her retirement. She's the only, one of the only child actresses to make a success of her life comfortably after her stardom. So, and then, she passes away in 2013 at the ripe old age of 91. She lived a real rich, full life. She really did. Very unlike any of the other contemporaries that she, yeah.